The Seattle Seahawks have been a team of consistency and usual dominance when it comes to getting out of the NFC West and becoming a prominent team in the playoffs and seen as potentially a Super Bowl contender. This year is not the case. And it's time to face the dark reality of this franchise and their future going forward and what we are to expect and what they should do with the future ahead of them. As they do not have many draft picks. They don't have a lot of young talent. They have a lot of expiring and very expensive contracts. They have a top 7, maybe top 5 quarterback on some years who hasn't ever gotten an MVP vote, even though he should. And a head coach that is outdated and a culture that is fading with the coach himself. And I'm wearing a Russell Wilson jersey, as you can tell, the action green. And as a fan of this team, I'm having to face the reality of potentially my favorite player in the league leaving and having to realize that this team is more set up to go into a hard rebuild than it is to try to push itself to another Super Bowl run. This happens for many Super Bowl teams, and many times when it's Super Bowl teams that make it more than once or get really close more than once, pieces start to fade, and pieces that made you so dominant and made a team so good, they one by one dissipate. You have Richard Sherman, who went to the Niners. You have Earl Thomas, who went to the Ravens and had a very ugly exit out of Seattle. Cam Chancellor had to retire because of injuries. Cliff Averill leaves. You have Michael Bennett is gone. Then you leave KJ Wright this past offseason. Now you just have Bobby Wagner on the defense. You trade for Jamal Adams, which was a terrible trade. Hindsight's 2020, but he's not a bad player. He doesn't fit the defense that has been set since 2011. And hasn't changed much other than the coordinators, and even then the coordinators don't change the defense at all because Pete is such a defensive mastermind, or was. The offense has no identity. Sometimes it wants to be a power running team, sometimes it wants to let Russell Wilson cook, and sometimes it's just a play action every once in a while, and Russ can't really get into a rhythm. They have a plethora of running backs that have 3-game stretches where they're fantastic and then they're injured, or will go 11 rushes for 35 yards. Chris Carson was a great find in the draft, but at the same time, he is never on the field and wants a bigger contract. You have Rashad Penny, who you spent a first-round pick on at a time when you really didn't need a running back, and usually a first-round running back isn't the best bet, but at the same time, he's having a great stretch of games this recent season, but I don't put a lot of stock into it because I've seen this story before and I'm seeing it again. And this time, the only difference between previous years after the 1-yard line incident, the difference is the record is significantly worse. The Seahawks have been pretenders since the Vikings game against Teddy Bridgewater and that missed field goal. This is my big statement for the game. They have been pretenders since that point forward. I have not believed that the Seattle Seahawks have been a contender and a viable Super Bowl threat since the 1-yard line incident. They've been able to make the playoffs. They've been able to be competitive. They've had really solid teams, but they haven't really been, in my eyes, what I could see them being a Super Bowl contender. And I even get swept up in the moments where I'm like, this is it. I mean, I see the first 5 weeks where Russell Wilson looks like a Super Bowl quarterback and MVP and top 3 quarterback, sometimes top 2 quarterback. And at some point, the cracks show as the season goes on. And he can only do so much. He can only cover so many of the problems with this team. And truth of it is, we finally saw why he deserves an MVP vote in the previous years, but we also saw he can't fix everything. And obviously you don't take a quarterback out via injury and you're like, oh well, the entire team sucks. I mean, it's taking away your leader, you're taking away your consistency, and he rushes back and he doesn't play as well, and then the playoff chances are gone, and then the season's gone. DK's losing his mind on the sideline. Pete Carroll's not saying much other than chewing some gum. And then you have Rashad Penny showing some life, so you're like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe we're just a couple pieces away. And if you fix the defense, then you had Trey Flowers outburst and saying that Seattle hasn't helped him at all, but he really doesn't fit in the scheme. Jamal Adams is getting roasted on Twitter every time he misses a tackle or can't play in the open field for coverage. There's so many problems. And I'm at the point as a fan that I suggest clean the slate. It's what's best for this franchise moving forward. You are pushing a square-shaped item into a triangle-shaped hole. It is the definition of insanity, because there's a reason why all these games are close. I don't have the spread of margin, but for years, from like 2018 to 2020, it's been close games with teams that either shouldn't be in the game at all, like they're way better than Seattle, but Seattle makes it close. They punch up, and Seattle can't punch down, so you have the Jets playing close games, and Russell Wilson pulls out a great fourth quarter, and then they win by 9, or they win by 5, or it's a game-winning field goal. The amount of times that it's happened, and I understand the division is way better and it's growing, so then you have 6 games out of the year where it's guaranteed to most likely be close, but then you're playing non-division rivals and it's close as well, and you're squeaking out wins, and all of a sudden you are 11-5, and oh wow, you had a really good season, but you barely squeaked to 11, and it wasn't like you were dominating while you were getting there. And when you lose ugly. The sad truth of it is the problem is Pete Carroll. He's going to be in the Ring of Honor. He's the greatest head coach for the Seattle Seahawks in their entire franchise history. But it's time to move off of him. It's time to sit him down and be like, listen, we don't want to fire you. We don't. But we want you to resign, and we want to move on and bring in a new regime. It's going to be time to move Russ. It's going to be time to move Bobby Wagner. It's not time to move DK. It might be time to move Carson. It might be time to let Dwayne Brown retire. He's not a good left tackle anymore, and he's seen to be the best player on that offensive line. But the offensive line, sooner or later, was going to break and give Russell an injury, and that's the last thing we want to see from Russell Wilson, is him not being at the field at all. I'd rather him be on another team and supporting him than have him injured because of our incompetence of building an offensive line. It's been over 6-7 years without having a good offensive line. Ever since we traded Alex Mack for Jimmy Graham, it has never been a good offensive line since then. And you change the scheme, you get a new defense coordinator, a new offense coordinator, you change everything, you keep Quandre Diggs. He's a good safety to pair next with Jamal Adams, but make Jamal Adams a weak side linebacker. I don't care. He's good at that role. If you have a player that's good at this role, just accept that and build around that. You've invested 2 first-round picks to him. Might as well change your entire defense to support Jamal Adams instead of making him a high safety, because the reason why Cam Chancellor worked so well was because Earl Thomas could go sideline to sideline with no problem, while Cam Chancellor to kind of hide his coverage problems, which he didn't really have a lot. He was a really good safety, but he could play in the box and run support with ease. But instead, Quandre Diggs is no Earl Thomas. He's a great safety, don't get me wrong, but he's not Earl Thomas. And it helps when you have corners that can stay with the wide receivers. There's so many problems that can go into the defense. The truth of it is, the scheme is outdated. This cover 3 scheme that you've ran for 10 years, it's a simple scheme that defenses now know how to exploit consistently, and when your offense can't continually keep up because Russ is just that special, just stop. It's time to change things up. It severely changed things up because Pete has too much power. He seems to be so focused and so articulately focused on trying to make draft picks so abstract that people on Twitter and the 12th man can't decide and guess, because if you don't know, on Twitter, right before the draft, Seattle will be like, guess, we'll give you a hint on who we're going to draft. And then it's some abstract Rasheem Green, you have Rashad Penny. And these are reaches. That's the truth of it. Whether they're a good player or not, there are reaches. At that point, trade back. Like, you're seeing my frustration over the past 6 years of this team that I have supported and I've defended many times, but the truth of it is, it's time to blow everything up. I'm not overreacting. This season has proved it. That maybe that Bears package would be better for the future of the Seahawks because they are not 1 to 2 years away. They're not a piece away. You don't go trade for Jalen Ramsey and then all of a sudden you're a contender. There's integral problems with the scheme and how the plays are being called and the desperation moves that are being made. Like you see the Seahawks, they're always in these like Odell, Antonio Brown, Jalen Ramsey. You hear them in the trade rumors, but they never really make a move until the Jamal Adams trade, in which that looks like a bad trade. The Jimmy Graham didn't work out for a reason. You want to know why? Because the system that was in place originally with the offense was running the ball with Marshawn Lynch and getting quick play action plays for Russell Wilson, because at the time he wasn't the superstar that he was. But then you choose Jimmy Graham, which at the time Jimmy Graham was at the peak. He kind of came off of an injury, but you trade Alex Mack, your quarterback at the offensive line, and you haven't had a good offensive line since. You wanted Jimmy Graham to block. He's never blocked in his entire career. He's a receiving tight end for a reason, and that didn't work out. Him and Russ couldn't get connected. You lose Doug Baldwin. I know I keep ranting, but it's time to move forward, and this is what I would do. This is what I would do. Obviously, you sit Pete down and you tell him to resign. We've already talked about that. You trade Russ. This is another bullet you have to bite. You trade Russ, and you tell him what are 5-6 teams you would prefer to go to. He's earned that respect, that you kind of send him to a place, hopefully the AFC, and you're like, listen, we will respect your wish and send you to the Dolphins or the Broncos. Get as many assets as you can back. Get like Bradley Chubb, 3 first-round picks, and maybe a veteran. Think of something like that. Bryce Callahan or something. I don't care, but get as many assets as you can for Russ. This is the biggest franchise piece that you can move right now, and get it and completely make this rebuild 110 times easier. You hit a home run with the head coach hire. You get Luke Fickell, Jim Harbaugh, whatever your opinions of Jim Harbaugh is. You make a big splash with a culture-defining coach that wants to rebuild the team. You switch up offensive coordinator. Obviously, the head coach would make those decisions. He's bringing in his own regime. You get a new GM. The front office moves are crucial to hit, but I don't have a list of candidates right now because I don't know who's going to be fired, who's going to be available at that time. You trade Russ, you get as many assets because you don't have a lot of draft capital right now. And you trade Bobby Wagner, maybe to the Texans, I don't know. Go get a second, maybe a third-round pick for him. He is aging, but he's still a very expensive contract, but he's a very high-level player that someone's going to trade for. I would give up Chris Carson, either let him walk or trade him for, I don't know, a 4th-round pick maybe. And you keep Quandre Diggs. Gerald Everett looked promising to me. And you keep Rasheem Green because he had moments and flashes, and Darrell Taylor if you can. And you move on. And at the quarterback position, I'd put a filler there. Go pick up Marcus Mariota. Okay, see what you could have in Marcus Mariota. And if it doesn't work, I'd go all in for Bryce Young. I know this is so ambitious to go look this far ahead, but this is what this video is about, is trying to figure out what's wrong. I mean, I told you what's wrong with the Seahawks. They can't draft. The defense is outdated. And it's time to move on. And I'm trying to think of what the next steps are. And if I got Bryce Young on my roster, I think he's the best NFL prospect I've seen in the past 6 years. I like him more than Trevor Lawrence. I'll say that on record right now. And if that ages terribly like most of my takes do, then that's fine. But I think the Seahawks need to sit down and think about what their next moves are, because the future is not looking bright right now. this cover 3 scheme that many teams are starting to figure out, or not even started. They figured it out probably in 2017, and they mastered it by now. Except for the Lions, of course. It's time to move on, and it's going to suck. This offseason is going to hurt. And I'm going to make videos when Russ gets traded and evaluate it, but if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I am back to making videos. I lost this mic at the beginning of the year, and it took me a while to find it. Back to editing. I'm going to try to make at least a video every other day. Write in the comments to let me know what you want me to talk about. I'm going to talk about the Texas Longhorns probably in the next video. And follow my TikTok. I do a lot of college football content there. I'll start mixing in more NFL, and the offseason will be coming up. So I'll be trying to post as much as I can. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Check out my other social medias.